We'll make another quick story here involving police accountability. Calls for a review of how CPD handled an investigation into an officer's alleged involvement with the right-wing Proud Boys.
That's right. Officer Robert Baker, who was found to have essentially been flirting with the Proud Boys. He said he was never a member, but I think he attended an event. He was engaging with this group. And I think most importantly for this story, honestly, when he was confronted about it by authorities, he lied about it. He gave shifting accounts. And yet at the end of the process, I think there was a mediation that ended up resolving it at the end, but he ended up with 120-day suspension. And so you have a number of people, including Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez, who are saying, this is just unacceptable. We cannot have people on the force, first of all, associating with right-wing white supremacist groups, clearly, but then to go ahead and lie about it, that just makes it all that much worse.
Jacoby, your thoughts on whether this case raises bigger issues?
Yes. I mean, something I learned growing up in a black household was that the reason the Ku Klux Klan wore masks is not just because it was a symbol. It was because it hid the face of politicians and lawmakers and people who sat on the city council in states and cities across America and police officers. And so what we're seeing now is a legacy of white supremacy existing inside police. Some would argue that the lineage of policing in America is one that follows the white supremacist route back. And so I'm not shocked. And I'm very much disgusted by this attempt to just kind of push it off and blow it off. People didn't storm the Capitol simply because they had the power and the willpower to do it. No, it's because people stepped out the way in some cases.
And they're blaming other people by saying that they're not a hate group, as identified by the FBI, which is kind of an interesting / scary dynamic there. Just putting it on the FBI to be like, hey, classify these people and we'll investigate this differently. But pretty much, having a Proud Boy cop in CPD is not something that I think people want to see.
Yeah. Of course not. Yeah. One last law enforcement story. The Cook County State's Attorney's conviction integrity chief is being accused of the kind of misconduct she's supposed to be keeping an eye on. Mick, first, explain what the conviction integrity chief's job actually is.
Yeah, this is a crazy story and really well put together by your colleague, Chip Mitchell. Got to give a shout out to him. But I think, first of all, the backdrop to this story, if we're going to understand what's going on, is that for years, Cook County was known as the wrongful conviction capital of the United States. And so by the time you had Kim Foxx get elected, she's in her second term now, one of her key promises as she was elected as a progressive reformer coming into the prosecutor's office, one of her key promises was to not only end the practice of these shoddy prosecutions and convictions, but to review a number of these old cases that have been in the system for so long and people have been locked up. So the Conviction Integrity Unit, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to look at these old cases. What Chip has reported on is that the head of the Conviction Integrity Unit currently with the state's attorney's office herself is embroiled in a very messy, complicated series of cases that stem from the murder of a Chicago police officer, Clifton Lewis, more than 10 years ago. A number of people who have been implicated in this horrific crime are challenging their convictions and basically saying they're not the right people, and CPD engaged in a shoddy investigation and whatnot. Where this ties back to the state's attorney's office and the Conviction Integrity Unit is that the head of that was one of the prosecutors in at least one of these cases, maybe a couple of the cases, and there are questions about whether they disclosed all of the evidence that was collected to the defense. So this gets into raises a lot of legal issues. It can get into the weeds pretty fast, but the bottom line is that in order to have faith that not only ongoing convictions are sound, but that the review of past convictions are sound, there needs to be someone with some distance from those cases initially, and that's not what's going on now.